was fun. I love this sport. I gave it my all. It's fucking crazy. I had a blast, and thank you to all the fans and everyone.
All right, folks, it's over. Joshua knocks out Jake Paul in the 6th round of their fight on Netflix.
Would align with a ring that size, a negative style, as we mentioned. It really comes down to the fan interest. Jake Paul is on a 2-fight stretch coming into this one, which really put his reputation on the line.
Boxing professionals react to Jake Paul's possible retirement after his stunning knockout defeat to Anthony Joshua. Paul has suggested that once he fulfills his ambitions in boxing, he may step away from the ring and transition toward an NFL career, marking a dramatic new chapter.
Well, after this, like legitimately, just to play like safety and just deck people. No, I swear to God, I'm about to bring hella ratings to whatever team I'm on.
Where would you want to go if you go to any team?
Shit, the Browns.
So
I can run a 4.34.
He's the fastest man on the planet.
I got hands. I have the size, the power. I can knock people out with one punch. So why can't I play free safety?
Do you think you coming into the NFL would be the equivalent of like when an NFL player says, I'm going to try to box now?
No, because I played football my whole life. At the end of the day, it's coverage, knowing your plays, and then just being fast. And
The boxing world reacted intensely after the fight, with former IB star delivering a brutal verdict following the shocking knockout. He claimed Jake Paul's boxing career was finished, calling the loss decisive and final. Former champion Duke McKenzie also weighed in, stressing that Paul was clearly undersized against Anthony Joshua. McKenzie explained that even when Jake attempted to attack, he struggled to reach Joshua cleanly, exposing the physical mismatch. He warned that continuing to face elite heavyweights is risky, urging Jake to abandon these matchups before they cause serious harm and further damage his credibility in boxing.
Tried to throw a shot, he would lunge in, jump in, and because he was so short, it missed. And then he ended up stumbling over his feet and falling over. Sometimes in that fight, he reminded me of, have you seen that Kung Fu film called The Drunken Master? Except for he wasn't a master. There's a Kung Fu guy who walks around and normally kicks people's ass, but he looks drunk all the time. That's what that fight reminded me of. It was such a poor showing from Jake Paul. You know, I mean, it's a well-documented fact. There was a lot of money on the line. And I'm sure you, Max, as I would, and anybody else in the street would fight Anthony Joshua for 75 million. You just would. And the same thing would happen. And even after the fight, now the fight's over, 75 million.
Another former user, Chelsea, reacted emotionally to Jake Paul's shocking loss, sharing blunt relief online. She admitted she rarely posts anymore, but said she was glad to see Paul defeated, believing the result might finally silence his trash talk. Former UFC champion Michael Bisping also weighed in on Jake Paul's crushing defeat to Anthony Joshua, describing performance as a complete masterclass from AJ. Bisping detailed how Paul absorbed heavy damage, explaining that Joshua's vicious uppercuts and sharp combinations left Jake with no space to breathe or reset. Even when Jake tried to escape by circling and running, he couldn't avoid the punishment. Bisping highlighted the visible injuries to Paul's face and body, stressing that the damage was serious. He warned that Jake must take significant time to recover before even thinking about another fight. The bout ultimately exposed Paul's clear limitations when facing elite, top-tier opponents.
In my humble opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? A lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it's hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots. And anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing, it's not MMA as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much, much faster. As I said, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, a glancing right hook, he goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live, there was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough to...
Former user Cabral's Finest reacted strongly to Jake Paul's shocking injury, stressing the seriousness of the aftermath by claiming Paul was taken to hospital with a suspected broken jaw and suggesting the damage may have forced an early retirement. Sean Jones also shared his thoughts on the brutal Anthony Joshua fight, pointing out that, at the very least, the bout was clearly real and not staged or scripted. He noted that even while breaking Jake's jaw, Joshua appeared to hold back, implying a knockout could have been far worse if AJ had fully unloaded. Jones emphasized how severe the injury truly was while acknowledging the authenticity of the contest. He added that Jake finally encountered a legitimate, world-class challenge, and the fight exposed the harsh reality of stepping into the ring with an elite heavyweight like Joshua, making the consequences especially serious.
All those people who were fully convinced that this fight was 100% rigged, like people said that this is a clown show, and they said this is rigged, this is scripted. Okay, so now Joshua's won. What are you going to say to that? So was it scripted that Joshua was going to win? You see this whole narrative about, oh, the fight's rigged, the fight's scripted. That's illegal to do, and Joshua is not going to tarnish his legacy by doing something like that. Would Jake Paul do something like that? Maybe so, yeah, but not someone like Joshua. Come on. Now, to be fair, 80% of that fight was looking a little bit dodgy. It was looking like Joshua wasn't throwing as much as he usually would. Jake Paul was landing on Joshua. He landed a really strong jab that knocked Joshua's head back. He landed a couple of decent overhand rights. In fact, Jake was kind of the first one who landed the biggest shots of the fight. But this is the thing, anyone who fights, even on like a low-level basis, or who just does some sparring, will understand that when you fight someone who has got nowhere near the skill level as yet, sometimes it can be a little bit harder because they're awkward, they're doing stuff that you don't really expect. You know, sometimes when you fight beginners, it's a bloody nightmare. Just like, you know, awkward movements. You're like, what are they throwing? You don't expect certain shots to come that do come. And then you fight someone who's a little bit more traditionally sound with the fundamentals, and it's almost a little bit easier. And I think that's what we've seen here in this fight. AJ has had an easier time with some fighters who've got like 40 professional fights with 20 KOs on the record than he did with Jake Paul. Why is that? Oh, because it's scripted. It's scripted. No, it's not scripted. It's just because Jake Paul was awkward. And he's a beginner in relation to Joshua. So Joshua just took some time to figure them out. You could see Joshua was getting a little bit frustrated in that 4th and 5th rounds, but then he started.
User Mir71 delivered a blunt warning to Jake Paul following his defeat, urging him to walk away from boxing altogether by stating, "Do everyone a favor and don't return." Many hardcore boxing fans appear to share that frustration. Analyst Liam Goff also raised serious concerns about Jake's future after his punishing loss to Anthony Joshua. Goff explained that most realistic paths forward in Jake's boxing career are now closed, at least temporarily, due to the severity of his injuries. With a broken jaw and additional physical damage, Jake is facing a lengthy recovery period that demands full attention. Goff emphasized that any talk of returning to the ring must be put on hold until Jake is completely healed. He stressed that this recovery window is critical not only for Jake's boxing ambitions, but for his long-term health and overall future in professional sports, making the situation deeply troubling.
That when he had that face-off with Tank Davis, he was looking at a guy who was, 5-6 inches shorter than him and probably 60-70 pounds lighter, right? So he was probably looking at that thinking, yeah, you're a legit boxer, yeah, you hit very hard, but look how much bigger I am to you. Contrast that to him looking up at Anthony Joshua and realizing, oh my God, look at the size of you in comparison to me. That's a bit different. And I think with Jake Paul, it really dawned on him what's going on. But Jake Paul has to keep face. He has to stay essentially in that persona that, you know, I am the man, I'm going to win this, trying to sell a dream to a casual, a bit like what Eddie Hearn does. Try to sell the casual audience that this is going to be a real fight, quote unquote. It was a real fight. It's not scripted, but you know what I mean. That he's really in this fight. That's what he was trying to do. And he did that well up until fight night. And boy, did he fail miserably on fight night. Again, I give him credit. He doesn't need to box. He can choose an easier profession, as I say. But to go in and to run around the ring like that, that was something else entirely. I mean, he was doing his best Roadrunner impression in there. He was running around that ring from the minute that bell went. That was all he was trying to do. And listen, AJ's performance, I can critique it from a defensive point of view, that he got hit with some silly shots that he probably shouldn't have been hit with. He was trying to cut the ring off in a ring as big as that. It's not easy. All right. And furthermore, if you're in there with an opponent who purely just wants to survive, he's no interest in winning the fight. He just wants to go to rounds. People, you could be one of the most you could be a prime Mike Tyson, Bone Crusher Smith. Prime example. People never talk about that fight with Mike Tyson because they say, oh yeah, prime.
Following his recent injury, Jake Paul took to X to update fans on his condition and recovery process. He revealed that he had undergone surgery, assuring supporters that everything went smoothly while expressing gratitude to his medical team. Jake acknowledged a difficult road ahead, explaining that he is dealing with significant pain and stiffness and will be limited to a liquid diet for 7 days. He specifically thanked the staff at Miami University Hospital, praising their professionalism, care, and compassion during his treatment. Commentator Wade also shared his thoughts on Jake's fight and future, suggesting that Jake may have felt he had already achieved his goals in boxing. Wade noted that unlike traditional champions, Jake does not need to defend multiple titles, allowing him to focus on high-profile money fights in the coming year. He speculated about potential matchups with major stars like Canelo, or even a slower year as Jake reassesses his path. Wade added that if Jake fully commits, a massive future bout with Tyson Fury could still be possible. However, he was clear that Jake was never on Anthony Joshua's level in terms of size, power, speed, skill, or stamina. Despite that, Wade respected Jake for daring to step into the ring, praising the hype, online reactions, and overall spectacle of the event created for boxing fans worldwide.
26, and I do think he fights a ton in 2026. I think it'll be a very slow year for him. Look for those two guys as the main two he would fight. I wish it was Tommy Fury, but I doubt it. On the other side, I want to see him get back into boxing specifically, get back into committing to this, because there is a massive fight that awaits him in Tyson Fury. It's far past time that it happened. If they don't do it now, they never will. And yeah, man, I don't really know what else to say on this fight. As far as, what happened in there tonight, I know on Twitter people are going to want their money back, or they're going to call it a bad fight or a sloppy fight or whatever. And then there's going to be people, celebrating Jake's downfall. That was always going to be the case. Of course, the first time he gets rocked, dropped, and stopped, people are going to celebrate like it's the 4th of July, or it's their birthday, or like it's Christmas. So yeah, expect that, but I won't do that. I won't, because I respect the hell out of him for going and doing it, and there's not any normal people on earth that would have done it. I don't care if you say,
Another former user, Zane, reacted with shock and concern to news of Jake Paul's injury, posting that Jake had suffered a double jaw fracture that could potentially end his fighting career. The reaction echoed widespread disbelief across the boxing community, with many pointing directly to Anthony Joshua's brutal power as the cause. Reports have since confirmed that Jake Paul did indeed break his jaw during the fight, an injury serious enough to sideline him from boxing for at least a year. Medical experts and industry insiders explain that recovering from a double jaw fracture requires prolonged rest, careful rehabilitation, and constant monitoring to avoid long-term complications. As a result, all training and competition plans must be put on hold. Fans and analysts alike have voiced concern, stressing that a fighter's health must always take priority, especially after such a punishing defeat. Jake has shared updates with supporters, thanking his medical team while openly acknowledging the pain, restrictions, and challenges he now faces. With his jaw broken, he is unable to train or compete safely, making full recovery the only focus. This injury represents a major setback and a significant pause in Jake Paul's boxing.
I thought that the Anthony Joshua-Jake Paul fight was going to be rigged. These x-rays definitely tell a different story. So on December 19th of 2025, as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, Jake Paul fought the two-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua at the Cassia Center in Miami, Florida, which was streamed exclusively on Netflix as part of a major boxing event that was promoted by Paul's Most Valuable Promotions. The ending result was Anthony Joshua won by knockout in the 6th round after Jake Paul was knocked down 4 times in total. twice in the 5th round and twice in the 6th round. Anthony Joshua landed 48 punches on Jake Paul compared to Jake Paul landing about 16 on Anthony Joshua. And this is the second professional loss of Jake Paul's fighting career, dropping his record down to 12-2. Now, Jake Paul ended up suffering a double broken jaw during the fight and was taken to the hospital afterward, skipping the post-fight press conference probably because he probably couldn't talk. But in his in-ring interview, he said, "That was crazy. I had a blast. I think my jaw is broke." Anyway, as far as his professional fighting career is concerned, as of December 20th of 2025, he doesn't have any new opponents that have been announced, and it's expected that his jaw injury is going to take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Regardless of how you feel about him, that dude fought a 2-time heavyweight champion and survived. And I think we can all agree that regardless of how you feel, that takes some...
Analysts Brian Campbell and Shaquille Majuri appeared on CBS Sports to analyze Jake Paul's recent fight, offering a detailed breakdown of his approach and performance. They observed that Paul relied heavily on movement and evasiveness, consistently circling and avoiding corners, which helped him survive longer than many expected. However, they questioned how he could seriously challenge for a cruiserweight title without engaging more assertively against elite-level opponents. Campbell, speaking from Missouri, suggested that Jake's long-term success may depend more on his popularity than pure boxing skill. He pointed to potential money fights, such as a bout with KSI or a rematch with Tommy Fury, as realistic and profitable options. The analyst also noted that Paul's defensive style and preference for a spacious 22-foot ring indicate that entertainment value and fan appeal may currently outweigh true championship ambitions.
And for him, in terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to what we did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a 2-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul, and we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age, to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so, because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there, there's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to...
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned until next time.